Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers to a new episode.
By the way, this is kombucha.
This is a wellness approved drink. Kombucha trilogy. We love it. So today, so excited to have another episode of Elevate with AVA. And today I have Miss Karina.
Hello again.
Hello. And I want to make sure, and we're going to give more information after this, but where could they find you on IG? Because all things heart healing, heart centered. I mean, I just had lunch with her and I'm already, this happens every time. I think every time I have a vlog with you guys, I tell you how much I feel so cleared up after speaking with her. I want to share that feeling. Where could they find you and Coco Bean?
Coco Bean _ Cavapoo. That's her little tag, but I'm not very active with her. It's just for fun. But for me, it's Karina _ Nascimento 1111. But you can do the tag underneath the video.
I sure will. It will be right here. Also, we're going to talk about a special topic. So before I go into that, I just kind of want to know, I know I gave them a little glimpse of how I'm affected every time we chat, but how would you describe what you do with your clients? So they get a little background before we get into our topic.
So transformational coaching is about undoing, uncoaching, unconditioning. So what we do is we explore a topic or an intention, and my program is 6 weeks long, and we meet twice a week. And during this time, it's basically an intention, and we go from there. It's very intuitive, and just basically me asking questions and helping my client process their emotions, their whatever it is that's coming up, and then finding their own answers.
And I gotta say, it's an effortless gift for her because we just went to Cafe Gratitude, had lunch, and it always turns into it was 3 hours. So, when she said, it's a 6-week session, I'm like, I can't even imagine how impactful that is because we did it's supposed to be a little catch up before this turned to 3 hours. But in those 3 hours, I had to give her a hug in the parking lot, and I said, oh my gosh, I already feel a different person. I relieved myself of some things that I was feeling, and it's amazing what someone's perception, point of view, and she asked me questions that led me to realize she was navigating. And so I'm really excited to share some of her insight and knowledge with today's topic. So Karina, present what today's topic is.
So today we're going to talk about 5 steps to overcoming grief in this COVID time, during COVID time. And specifically, I think that it's very helpful to talk about, relationships and breakups because that is a grief. But I wanted to just in general speak about grief because maybe, somebody lost a loved one or a friend, or it could be you lost a job or a house. So there's been a lot of loss during this past year. So it could be for anything really. But I specifically just went through a breakup, and I realized that these 5 steps worked for me. And to remind you too that grieving is a process, and it's, there are stages to grieving, and a lot of times it's not linear. So we can bounce back and forth, and it's cyclical and it's ongoing. So, don't be frustrated. And
trust the process.
Trust the process. And that's actually number 1. The number 1 step is transitions nicely. Number 1 step is be patient and trust the process and be patient with the process. And most importantly, be patient with yourself, right? So there's a lot of talk about self-love these days. And I think that is a term that's been overused. And a lot of times people don't really understand what that means or how to do it. So number 1 is self-love and compassion, right? So you're patient with yourself. You talk to yourself kindly, but you're also aware that you are going through this grieving process, that there are stages. And the number one stage of a grieving process is usually denial or numbing. So you're either on denial that this happened, or you're not really feeling anything. You're just like, I'm fine, everything's fine. And you know, you just had this huge loss, but you're like, everything's fine, let's go, let's, you know, just keep going, because it hasn't really hit you yet. And so just be aware, like, okay, I'm on the first stage, you know, I had this huge loss, I'm not really feeling it, but it might hit me at some point.
Right.
And just remember, just be kind to yourself. Talk to yourself like how you would speak to a little child, or with a friend who you love, or a sister or a brother that you love, that you care. How would you speak to somebody that's going through a big loss, right?
And it sounds like you're giving yourself permission to feel, like it's okay to feel.
Yes, absolutely. That's very important. You have to give yourself permission, which that's number 2.
Oh God!
We are on point today, which is feeling your feelings, right? Feeling the emotions. The only way through a process is through it. The only way to break through anything in life is through it. You can't sugarcoat it. You can't, there's no shortcuts, really. The only way through it is through it. And I think a lot of times people skip this big step of feeling their emotions. And they either stay stuck on number 1, staging of grief, which is numb and denial, or they jump some steps and go straight to accepting the situation without really feeling it. And the problem with that, you know, that suppression or that bypassing, is that a lot of times things will repeat.
Wow.
They'll come back to haunt you. And so sometimes you're like, why is this happening again? Well, maybe you didn't grieve it fully. Maybe you didn't feel fully everything you had to feel the last time.
It's almost like if you sweep something under the rug, it will still be there because you didn't address it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the number 1 feeling that people suppress the most is anger, which is stage 2 of grief. And anger is a scary one to feel. I say this from experience, because I have no problem with my anger. Some people might, but I don't. I accept that I have anger. It's part of being human being. I have anger in me, and sometimes I'm a little explosive. So what I've learned to do this past few months is, and I'll be honest, I fail sometimes, and you know, I didn't act as holy and mature and evolved as I should or could or whatever, but I'm also learning, you know. However, I found some really good tools, and I think that that's something that I think can be very useful to and helpful to everyone. So when you're going through the second stage of grief and you're angry and you're just like, you're feeling all that fire, you know, you're like, oh, I just hate this person or this situation or whatever. A lot of times we go and we meditate. I'm fine, I'm good, all is well. You know, that's called spiritual bypass. We call it spiritual bypass. So we meditate it away, or we pretend it's not there. We shove it under the carpet, right? Because we're afraid to feel it, or we think, you know, we've been conditioned to think that anger is bad. Anger is bad. I'm not supposed to feel it. I'm not supposed to express it. And anger is not bad. Anger is just showing you that you need some attention. There's a part of you that's hurting. You know, maybe there's fear. Maybe there's trauma. Whatever it is, it's pointing for you, a place for you to look at and give yourself love and compassion, which goes back to number 1. So then you remind yourself, oh, I just gotta feel this. I gotta sit with it and feel it. And what is it telling me? So some of the tools: kickboxing, boxing, MMA, great tools. And maybe, you know, quarantine time, it's hard to go to a place and punch some bags. There are online classes that we've done together. Or, you know, if you're not that, you don't want to take a whole class, you can just take some moment, go alone in the closet, in your car, wherever you want to go, and just punch the air. punch and kick
There
the
you
air.
go.
Or get a pillow, punch the pillow. Or, put the pillow on your face and scream. Or go to a park or go somewhere remote and just scream it out. Let it all out. Let it let it bubble up and let it out. Like, just express it. Release that anger. Release that. It's just energy. It just needs to be released and transformed into something else. Obviously, you don't want to, do it in front of people that might be scared, or you might, you don't want to hurt anybody. So,
Right.
We
all have our levels of anger.
Let's be mindful. No, I mean, there are levels. I mean, there was a day that I was angry. And I say this too, like, I was so angry that I was like, wow, at this point, I need help. So if you get to that point that you're like, you feel like you don't know what to do with all this anger, reach out to somebody.
Right.
I could help you process it. Or another thing that really helped for me was breath work. Amazing, which is actually something I am going to be doing. I'm going to be doing some training to become a breathwork practitioner, facilitator. It has been amazing. I did some breath work on one-on-one with somebody, and then online classes. And sometimes you just sit there and you breathe. So a good one, a quick one that you can do is just you inhale for like 6 seconds, you hold for 6 seconds, and you release for 6 seconds. And you do that a few times until that the feeling like subsides. But the important thing is to feel the anger, be with it, let your body move and do whatever it needs to do, release it, let it go. Then the third stage of grief is bargaining. So what we start doing is, maybe once that anger subsided, you start thinking, well, I guess maybe that wasn't so bad, right? And if it's a relationship and somebody hurt you, or maybe there was betrayal, or you name it,
Right.
whatever is making you angry, and you dealt with that anger, so now you're going, well, maybe it wasn't that bad, maybe I should forgive this person and give this person a second chance, or what if? So you start going into the what if scenarios, and it's okay. Like, this is the important part of the grieving process, because it can relieve you a little bit from the pain, right? And give you a little bit of hope so that you keep going. But it's important to talk to somebody and really process this, so that you don't make choices that are going to hurt you later, or they're going to haunt you later, right? Sometimes it's good to give it some breathing time and let things unfold and let the dust settle, and if it's something that really can't reverse, that's irreversible, it can be kind of tricky. So I find that this stage, especially when it comes to relationships, people can kind of get stuck in that loop, because the anger protects you from forgiving that person, right? So let's just put in the relationship context so that it's a little bit easier to explain. So you're angry, and it protects you from forgiving that person, from bargaining, from going back, because you're hurt, right? So the anger has, you see how the anger has a positive intention.
Wow.
It's protecting you. And then you're able to forgive that person, and then it's like, oh, okay, it's not that bad. Maybe we can get back together. And then you remember, no, I can't. I love myself. I respect myself. I'm not gonna do this. I know that I need to move forward. And so then you feel angry again. Why? Right? So people can get stuck in this little loop. So it's important to just sit down and feel it, be with it, know that it's gonna pass, know that it takes time, be patient with yourself. So it's important to just keep reminding yourself of those things.
When you're self-aware of the loop, you could regulate so you don't react.
Correct.
And then if you have someone guiding you through this process, it could kind of make sure it's not a vicious cycle, and you could kind of monitor, or you could keep a balance and just be aware of your thought process and think of the process rather than react on the process.
Yeah, it's very helpful to have neutral people to help you through the process. And also forgiveness is very important, and it's a very difficult thing to do sometimes. You know, in the Bible it says, not to be religious or anything, but Jesus said, the disciples asked Jesus, how many times should we forgive? And Jesus said 70 times 7. And I think a lot of times we think, oh, you know, whenever somebody hurts you, you have to forgive. But what I realized that sometimes you have to forgive the same person for the same thing 70 times 7. You know, it keeps coming back. You get angry, you forgive, and then you're angry again, and you forgive, and you just have to keep choosing to forgive and let go and love yourself. And in that process, eventually it will heal. It takes time. But in this time, you know, if you do the work, which is sitting with the emotions and releasing it, processing it, it's quicker. I guarantee you. It's hard, and it's hard to see that when you're going through it. Trust me, I understand. But it does work. If you stick with it and just feel it all, it will move quicker. And forgiveness, like they say, unforgiveness, this is a big lesson for me, is drinking poison and wish the other person dies. So this was a huge lesson for me in particular. Even though we know that in our head, sometimes it just takes time to for our heart to catch up with what we already know. But keeping, choosing to hate somebody and to hate a situation and, to stay stuck in this loop, because at the end it is, you kind of have a choice, right? It's a process, it takes time, it's not gonna dissolve overnight. I mean, it could, but most people will go through a process and it takes time. But if you choose to be angry and hate others, you're really just hurting yourself and hating yourself. So part of the process as well, I found, is that forgiving yourself is a very important part of the healing process.
So freeing.
It's very freeing. And I found that once I forgave myself for my past mistakes, or for even current mistakes, or even for how I handled some of my process, I realized that I was able to forgive the other person.
It's almost like, I think of these scenarios where two people are fighting and one says, I'm sorry, and then you could easily now, you feel that feeling when they apologize, and then you say sorry so easily because it just broke that tension. And it's the same way with ourselves when we start with us. Yeah.
And so going back to step number 1, if you have self-love and compassion, so if you have compassion for yourself and be like, you know what, maybe I made a mistake in the past, but I was doing the best I could. I really was doing the best I could at the moment with the level of understanding and consciousness and wisdom that I had at the moment. And even if it was 2 weeks ago, I was doing my best, even if I could have done better. At that moment, I was doing my best. And when you start looking at yourself like that and you have compassion for yourself, you're like, it's easier to have compassion for others. So it's very connected. Sometimes we forgive others and we have a hard time forgiving ourselves. And sometimes when we forgive ourselves, helps us forgive others. So just something to think about when you are in the grieving process. The next stage of the grieving is depression or sadness. So once you've dealt with your anger and you forgave the person, or sometimes even God, right? Sometimes you get angry at God or the universe or life, or whatever you want to call it. Why is this happening to me? Which can be a little bit of a, victim mentality. And when we are in victim mentality, we hate when people tell us you're being a victim. I personally don't like it. But it's just a reminder that you're not a victim. You're not a victim to your circumstances. Life doesn't do anything to you. It does it for you. So, in this phase, it's hard to see that and hard to accept that because we're sad. We're coming almost close to accepting the situation. We know it's irreversible. We know there's no coming back. It is what it is. But there is a loss. So we're hurting. We're not angry anymore. So that anger, once that's done and you forgave, then it comes that place of like, wow, I'm just sad that I can't have that anymore. And this is my new reality. And so that's very important to be very patient and kind and compassionate with yourself. Even when people around you, especially if the people around you are not being patient, kind, and compassionate towards you. Because a lot of times people will be like, well, come on, get out of it, You're not a victim. And, they want to give you that tough love. But if you're in a depressed stage, it's very sensitive and you don't really want that, right? But that's a reminder. Like, is that how you're just speaking to yourself? If people are speaking to you like that, is that how you're speaking to yourself? Just be like, that's okay. How would you speak to a little child who's hurting, because they lost something very precious to them? You would hug them and give them love and compassion and be like, it's gonna be okay. Right? So that's how you speak to yourself. And I had a practice this past few months that I listened to affirmations every morning for like 14 minutes. I wasn't really repeating it. I wasn't, like forcing, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy. It wasn't a bypass, but it was something I said, you know what? I'm gonna listen to this every day. And I listened. I went on a walk with my dog and I put my headphones and I just listened to it. And you can do morning affirmations on YouTube, there's a couple of great ones out there. And it'd be like 15 minutes of just listening to that. And yoga has done amazing for me. Doesn't have to be huge. Doesn't have to be like an hour yoga. You don't have to go anywhere. There are apps. There's YouTube. 15 minutes. I would do, some days I was like, I can barely move. 15 minutes. 10, 5, not 50. 15.
1.5.
Like 10 minutes. Like do whatever you need to do, So I would do a little bit of yoga and then I would sit in front of the mirror and I would just do 5 minutes of mirror work. And just look at myself in the eyes and tell myself how amazing I am, how beautiful I am, everything I've accomplished, and talk to my inner child, whatever I felt like I needed it that day. I would love to receive it from somebody else. I would give it to myself. I would hug myself. I would touch myself and say, I got you. We got this. We can do this. And I would be my own cheerleader, even if I wasn't feeling it. You know what I mean? It was just like a practice, and I just kept doing that. And meditation. There are some great meditations out there, and I said, I'm done with the past. Now it's time to think of the future. So I started doing some Joe Dispenza meditations or heart coherence meditations, just breathing into the heart, getting into that, when you calm down your brain waves, and then just think of the future that I want for myself. And
wow. So instead of bypassing, like the difference is you're building a relationship with, you're strengthening.
Yes.
And it's like going to the gym. Sometimes it might be hard, but if you keep practicing, keep building, it just strengthens.
Yeah.
Because what I'm hearing throughout everything is how we feel inside and how we speak to ourselves.
Yes.
It's all connected with how we feel about others and maybe how they react back.
For sure. I mean, you can only love others as deep as you love yourself, right? So if people are not loving you, if they're not being kind to you, I was feeling a lot of judgment from people these past couple of weeks, and I realized the reason why is because I was judging myself. And so when I was able to forgive myself, which was, I wasn't even aware. I'm like, I forgive myself. And then one day I was like, oh, I haven't really forgiven myself. It dropped deeper. That's an important part of the work that I do, is helping people drop, because you can know things all day. Like I said last time, if information, my teacher says it's, if information transforms people, we all be transformed, right? So it's important to drop to your heart and have that deeper realization of and get that forgiveness. And so yes, the yoga and the meditation and the affirmations they work, they are important, but not as a bypassing tool. You have to feel it first. You have to go through the emotions. You have to go through the stages and release that energy. So then you can invite the new and be really open to receive the new. You can't. I just got reminded of something, another little Bible story, that they said you can't put new wine in old, what is it that they call, like, the old bags, you know? You have new skin. You need new skin. You can't put new wine in old skin. So it's important. You have to clear your vessel in order to receive the new. And so if you're grieving a loss, it could be, you know, that I actually posted something about this week. You could be grieving a part of you. You could be grieving an identity.
Wow.
And that's, I think for me, it was a little bit of that too, you know, and as we are women, single women, going to our 40s now, it's like you start questioning and things about your life and what do I really want and who am I really? And it's like, I'm not that person I was anymore, but so who am I? And society creates this expectation, right?
Wow.
Like, I'm not a mother. Is that gonna happen? Should that happen? Is that okay? And so I think there's a part of me that was grieving myself, like an old identity too.
Wow.
And I think a lot of people are going through that because of COVID. Like, a lot of identity has been lost. You know, people that lost jobs and, you know, careers or things they've been doing for their whole lives or businesses. And it makes you question, like, who am I without this job, without this career, without this house, without this relationship, without my marriage, you know, kids going away, without my kids. I think that this COVID, this situation brought a lot of change, a lot of transformation, and a lot of people are a little bit lost.
Wow, when you said grieving an identity, you're right, like, for whatever level it is, I mean, a lot of people had to find themselves without that loved one, that mother, that father, that job, that relationship. And it really, again, stems back to ourselves and what we're feeling internally and what we're defining as ourselves as we define the outside, at what we define the outside.
Yeah. So very important to realize that, grieve, go through the process, feel and do the best you can with each stage. So there are some little tools, and once you feel that completely, and grief has its own process and journey and, like, cycle, right? It has its own timeline. We can't say, I'm done. I'm done grieving. It would be nice. But, you know, unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. If there's something still there, it's gonna come out. And you just gotta remind yourself of that. But the good news is, once you go through all that, then comes the acceptance stage. And that's when you accept what is, you surrender, you know, what you thought should be or could be. You're no longer bargaining. You're not thinking, what if, you know, maybe if I did this, maybe if I had done this. Or, there's no more guilt. You accept, you forgive, you see the lessons, you see the growth, hopefully, and you start opening yourself for the new. And then hopefully you're stronger and wiser, and know that if it happens again, you've been through it, like, how many times?
Right.
But now you're aware, like, wow, I've been through this, and I have the tools, and I know I can go through it, and I know I'm stronger and wiser. And so if it happens again, I'm a better person, and I'm more equipped to handle this better. And so I think that has been part of my journey and what I've learned this past few months. I mean, my whole life, but this past few months really highlighted these steps and these tools that I thought would be useful.
Right, and I think being aware as we go through things, it changes it. It's almost like, I think when you tell me about these phases, right, it's like when let's say you ran a marathon, that first marathon, you might have been questioning yourself a lot, like, can I do this? I mean, a half marathon? And then you went through all the phases. You were tired. Maybe you felt like you couldn't go on anymore. Your feet are sore, but then you made it.
Yeah.
Second time around, you're feeling the same things going through the marathon, but you already have evidence that you've made it.
Yes.
Then second, third time, and we just trust the process more and more. And if you're self-aware and just know that all these feelings are normal and you don't suppress it, but embrace.
Yeah. Embracing.
Ooh, that surrender, it's just like it relieves us from that weight.
Yeah.
And I think with me, you know, sometimes I just want to be like, okay, I feel this way. Actually, tomorrow I'm going to decide to be happy. And I've done that so many times. But the weight of the energy of suppressing how you feel, when you just say, all right, I feel this way, embrace how you feel. Give yourself compassion. I feel like that is just, that relief.
And you know, like sometimes in life we have to put on a good face, whatever, for whatever's going on in our lives that we have to show up for, which is, it's okay if you have to do that, right? But if you can, make sure you make the time to still grieve and process and feel. So maybe that means if you have like a very social job, maybe that means you stay alone in the weekends and you just take time to take care of yourself instead of distracting yourself with things. And I think in this period of COVID, people were forced to do that because there weren't a lot of things to distract. And it's a great thing. I know it's painful and it was hard. It's been hard. But now that things are starting to open up and, you know, things are starting to come back to normal, it's important to be mindful of that. If you're feeling something, if you're not fully done or complete or healed, continue with your journey and your process and take time for yourself. Because if you don't do it, it's gonna come back. It's gonna show up in other places. It could be in your health, it could be, you know, in your relationship, it could be on a future relationship or on a future something. It could just, and it will feel like it's karma, but it's just life giving you an opportunity to complete something that's still needing completion. Is that helpful?
Yes. Yes. And I really feel like, I think for me, you know, also AVA, everyone told me is alpha vibrations always. It's like I'm always wanting to just button up and, all right, this is how I feel, but time for meeting. And I gotta, you know, be up to par. But then you make me realize, okay, yes, be up to par, but just make sure to, yes, you have to, you know, like do what you gotta do, but then make sure you give yourself that love later. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you know, I'm thinking about all the times, like, not only, I definitely felt this way where, okay, put it under the rug, put it under the, just like it all goes by universal law, right? If you just keep putting something under the rug, it will stay under the rug. And through quarantine, people were stuck at home and they finally, you know, a lot of people felt some way because they had to address what's under the rug. But the great thing, you know, on a good note, I feel like a lot of people reflected maybe things that they were suppressing for a lifetime.
Oh, for sure.
And now we could all come out of it, you know, a different, more developed person. And I'm really glad that through these times, I'm really lucky to have Karina in my presence. And I also go to YouTube and try, you know, strengthen myself because it is a gym. Really, like, I love working out and I realize everything's the same concept. You know, you gotta build on loving yourself. You gotta build on the relationship with yourself. Just like the gym. At first, oh my God, I could only go so much, and then I just get obsessed with developing and strengthening. And just like the gym, I like a community. I like support. I love someone there with me. I love guidance. Oh, how much better it is with guidance. So, oh my gosh, I'm telling you, 3 hours with Karina, sitting here with Karina.
That wasn't a session either.
And it wasn't even, that was lunch over cafe gratitude. So I could only imagine. So please, again, if you need, I already know everyone got affected and impacted by what we talked about, but if you need any support in any area, Please give them your information one more time right here. Where can they find you?
Just email me on h3transformation@gmail.com, or you can find me on Instagram. And I will be taking new clients mid-June. So for this month of May, I am taking a little break, take care of some personal things. But mid-June, I will be available for new clients.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you again, Karina. Bye.
Bye-bye. Cheers.